Alrighty, yo, it is that time of the day, so let's get started here. Just a heads up, I'll be keeping my eye on the chat. Feel free. I will answer all questions at the end of this presentation, but feel free, if you think about something, throw it in the chat, throw it in the Q&A. And yeah, so the Intel Vitality Program would like to welcome you into our seminar today on chrono exercise, finding the best time of day for your workout, right? I'm Coach Cole through the Intel Vitality Program. And I want to start us out today by just asking everyone the question, whether you've taken the chronotype quiz or not. Do you consider yourself a morning person, an evening person, a little bit of both, or maybe neither, right? So throw it in chat here, whether you're a morning person, an evening person, maybe a little bit of both and or neither. Okay, evening, morning, night, more of an evening, morning. I love it. So I already can see so far in chat, very mixed, right? So feel free, keep sending that in there. Morning, little bit of both, right? So I think that's really kind of the big thing here is it really does depend person to person, right? Some of us are a little bit of both. Some of us are morning, some of us are evening. Now, this all has to do with our circadian rhythm, right? Whether we realize it or not. So our circadian rhythm are 24-hour cycles that are part of our body's internal and biological clock. So one of the most popular ones that most of us know about is our sleep and wake cycle, right? When we naturally want to wake up and when we naturally want to go to bed. And our circadian rhythm runs in the background of every essential function that our body does. So our cells have circadian rhythm in our muscle, in our lungs. So again, we are very clock-based individuals. Our biological clock refers to the system that regulates our innate sense of time and controls our circadian rhythm. So that's why oftentimes, like what y'all have been saying, your biological clock will determine whether you're a morning person, an evening person, or if you have a little bit of flexibility. So when we look at the importance of circadian rhythm influences so many important functions in the human body. Okay, we just touched on a few here, but there are so many more than this, such as sleep patterns, hormone regulation, appetite and digestion, body temperature, and alertness. Okay, and also there's so many factors, biological and environmental factors that influence circadian rhythm, such as genetics. That's going to be the largest one there. Light and dark, food intake, chronic stress, physical activity, social environment. Like somebody living in New York, for example, when restaurants and society kind of runs a little later versus maybe somebody who's in a small town, that can affect your circadian rhythm. Temperature, artificial light, shift work, and traveling between time zones as well has a very large impact on your circadian rhythm. So it's that combination of biological as well as environmental factors that really can lead to our natural circadian rhythm. So when we're looking at disruptions of circadian rhythm, right? Disruptions in the circadian rhythm can very much have a negative impact on our overall health and well-being. As when the circadian rhythm becomes irregular, our body does not function optimally. Again, the majority of our hormones, our recovery processes are all done through sleep. So when it's interrupted, a lot of those functions can fall to the wayside. So example of if your biological clock is interrupted, let's just say, for example, you love falling asleep between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. and it's interrupted and you go to bed at 2 a.m., right? That's going to reduce the hours you're sleeping, as well as you're going to have shallower, fragmented, and overall lower quality of sleep. Anytime that you're going against that biological clock, you're going to have an increased risk for insomnia and excessive daytime tiredness, and having that reduced physical and mental recovery. Again, when we're talking about physical and mental recovery, sleep is of the utmost importance. There's thousands of studies looking at the effect of sleep on mental performance as well as physical performance and recovery. So when we're talking about exercise's influence on sleep, regular exercise, even short bouts as small as 20 minutes, can lead to improvements in total sleep time, sleep quality, and time spent falling asleep. So very beneficial when pairing it with your sleep biological clock, making sure you get enough sleep. It also may help reduce the symptoms of sleep apnea, insomnia, and restless leg syndrome. So all these syndromes that can come and lead to decreased amount of sleep, exercise can help alleviate some of those issues. So exercise can also reduce stress and racing thoughts and overstimulation when trying to fall asleep as well. Because when we exercise, our nervous system is engaged at a high level. And then later in the evening, all of these issues are nervous system issues. It has decreased activities, so it can help reduce stress, racing thoughts, especially as we're falling close to sleep late at night. So what is chrono exercise? So this whole presentation, what is chrono exercise about? So chrono exercise is practicing your exercise routine according to your body's internal clock, aka optimizing your circadian rhythm around your physical activity, right? So the biggest way we can do this is take into consideration your chronotype. So your sleep chronotype, in a very short essence, is whether you're considered a morning person or an evening person, maybe a little bit of both, or maybe neither, right? And before the seminar, I did send out a link for a sleep chronotypes quiz, just in case you're curious. It takes about 5 minutes. There's also a YouTube video that will give you instructions based off of your results. So a great way, if you're unsure, as many of us kind of have a good inkling, if you know from what I asked previously, if you're a morning or evening person, but it's a great way just to kind of get a little bit more information tailored to yourself personally, all right? So when we're looking at chrono exercise, does exercising impact sleep, okay, before bed? The impact of exercise on sleep is really based on the type and timing of the activity. And we'll go over that a little bit more into detail later. But yes, exercise can have an effect on your sleep when done close to bedtime. So when we're talking about how to schedule your exercise to improve your sleep, the first thing we want to do is ideally schedule sleep around our chronotype, what our natural circadian rhythm really enjoys. So if you're a morning person, trying to exercise in the morning, or as if you're an evening person, try to exercise a little bit later in the evening. The second thing is to try to find, some exercise in the day that best works for you, right? Sometimes it might not be optimal or fit into your work schedule that naturally fits into your circadian rhythm. So the next best thing you can do is try to find something that fits into your schedule and keep that schedule consistent, right? Our circadian rhythm can naturally adapt. So making sure that if you can't exercise in the times your circadian rhythm naturally wants to, the big thing is staying consistent. So like, for example, working out at 10 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday every day. So one of the questions I get all the time is, Cole, I'm neither chronotype. I just want to know for like optimization, right? I want to be the strongest, fastest person I could be. Is it better to work out in the morning and or the evening? Well, from what we've been talking about earlier, the research is really mixed on this topic because it really is dependent on your circadian rhythm. Some people through the research say that it's better exercising in the evening because you're more well hydrated, you have a higher body temperature, you've consumed more calories throughout the day, so you have more blood sugar and more calories to expend, as well as sometimes lifestyle barriers come in the way, work is there, so it's better to work out in the evenings. Some research argues that morning exercise may be beneficial, as there's a lot of psychological factors that are involved when you work out early in the morning, such as increased motivation, decreased stress, and an increase in mental energy. As well as some studies show that there is improvement in aerobic activities when done in the morning when compared to the evening, as well as avoiding some potential lifestyle barriers. But what all of these studies show together is that the best results really come from consistency as your circadian rhythm will adapt to your training. So whether it's better or to exercise in the morning or evening, some research argues one way, but what they all agree on is the most important thing is that consistency. So either morning or evening, make sure you stay consistent with one of the two. So when programming in exercise into your schedule, we always want to look at potential roadblocks, right? So let's say late afternoon or evening is the only time you are free to work out, even though your chronotype might be an early morning chronotype where you want to work out early in the morning, right? How will this impact my sleep, right? So generally, it's recommended that no vigorous activity is done within 1 hour before going to bed, right? So exercising, 2 hours, 3 hours before bed is okay, even at a vigorous intensity, right? It's just that hour before bed, we want to make sure we avoid vigorous activity, right? So give the body a chance to wind down. So should I decrease my sleep to get some early morning exercise in? So the big thing us as coaches really want to emphasize is do not exercise at the detriment of your sleep. Like, for example, if you're sleeping 6 hours a day and you're like, hey, should I wake up an hour early and only get 5 hours to get that extra hour of exercise? Ideally, we really want to avoid that, right? Because exercise is a stress. And without having 8 hours of sleep or however many you need to recover, right? That stress might lead to adverse side effects, right? So making sure that your exercise doesn't come at the detriment of your overall sleep. All right. The last example here is maybe your schedule is hectic and sometimes you have to work out through random times throughout the day, right? This is oftentimes the case, and you'll still get some great benefits from exercise, but it just might not be as effective, right? So again, we would rather have you exercise random times throughout the day, but when we're talking about optimizing, right, it might not always be optimal. All right. So next, we're going to go into night shift workers, as there are oftentimes a ton of night shift workers within Intel, and we want to make sure that we give sleep strategies not only to them, but also these strategies can also be used by anyone, right? So working the night shift is great. There's a lot of benefits to it, as sometimes you can get promotions and higher pay. However, through the research, we've seen that during 24-hour periods, that night shift workers oftentimes lose to 1 to 4 hours of sleep, right? This means that they might have a higher increased risk for metabolic syndrome, cancer, decreased socialization, vitamin D deficiency as they aren't working in natural sunlight conditions, decreased in sleep quantity and quality. So why are these effects happening to night shift workers? Right? They're fighting their natural circadian rhythm. Even if you're considered a late night individual, a wolf chronotype, right? You're still fighting that natural circadian rhythm. Humans naturally want to work while it's light out and rest as it's dark. And yes, there are some variations, but that's generally what we naturally want to do. The other reason is there's no natural light during working hours. Natural light is very important for our vitamin D absorption, for making sure that we are feeling energized, and our sleep quantity and quality is also affected by light absorption. The other thing is oftentimes with night shift workers, sometimes they alternate between day and night cycles. So for example, they're working in the evenings, but then on the weekends, they might try to stay up and go towards what we call like standard working hours. And their circadian rhythm never really gets a chance to fully adapt. So some strategies for night shift workers, as well as all individuals, all of these strategies can be very effective in improving your sleep, is making sure you're making sleep hygiene a high priority, right? Prioritizing your sleep. Instead of, having the thought process of, man, I've been working hard all day. I haven't had a chance to relax. I just want to watch a show. I want to be on my phone for 30 minutes before sleep. Okay, have these thoughts with yourself. Okay, prioritize sleep. That extra 30 minutes of being able to wind down and be able to get to bed, sleeping longer and through the night really can have an impact on your energy and can therefore give you a little bit extra time throughout your day. Sticking to a routine is very important, right? What we've been talking about this whole presentation is that circadian rhythm. Our body loves routine. So making sure you stick to that routine. And yes, I'm not saying never break that routine, but in general, trying to stick to that as best you can and having upsets to that routine be, very small and few in between. Cautious with caffeine utilization. I will be talking about that a little bit later, but making sure you're not drinking caffeine too close to bedtime. When we're looking at wellness strategies, make sure you eat healthy, right? We have registered dietitians on the account. They'll be more than happy to give you some recommendations on what foods are great to eat before bed, as sometimes highly processed foods can keep us awake because our gut has to digest them and it can interrupt the sleep process. Hydration. So making sure you're hydrating throughout the day, okay? One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they try to hyperhydrate right before bed, and then they have to wake up in the middle of the night to use the restroom, therefore interrupting their sleep cycle, right? You want to drink and hydrate water and then stop ideally 1 to 2 hours before bed. Exercise. So not exercising vigorously an hour before bed, as well as making sure to get some exercise throughout the day really can help your body naturally fall asleep, especially if you're on a night shift schedule. Limit stress. So ideally, whatever you're working on, especially when you're trying to go to bed, try to deconnect yourself from those stress. Last but not least, what I think one of the most important things for night shift workers is to adjust that mindset, right? You are working a schedule that is different from the majority of individuals in our population. And you need to kind of have that mindset shifted that, hey, I might not be able to do everything I want to during the day because society kind of runs on a different schedule with me. That I need to sleep and make sure to get on a nice, good sleep, consistent schedule rather than trying to fight this and try to stay up during the daylight hours. When we're looking at strategies that don't work for night shift workers, as well as doesn't work for other individuals, that are trying to improve their sleep is melatonin assisted sleep, right? So when we look at melatonin's effect on, trying to assist your sleep schedule, the research is very inconclusive. Melatonin is a hormone that helps you feel tired, right? But it's a hormone that our body naturally produces and is followed with our circadian rhythm. So we really want our body to produce its own melatonin. And when taken endogenously, oftentimes our body won't release as much of it, meaning that we won't be as tired and can sometimes lead to insomnia issues. And also the long-term use of melatonin are unknown and not well researched yet. Next, heavy caffeine utilization. So as a reminder, y'all, caffeine has a half-life of 3 to 5 hours, right? So that means when I drink, let's just say at 10 a.m., I have a cup of coffee with 100 milligrams of caffeine in it. That means 10 hours later, I will still have 12.5 milligrams of caffeine in my system, right? So that's probably not enough that would really keep me up at night. But when you're getting into those higher dosages of caffeine, when we're talking about, 300 milligrams, 400 milligrams, right? Okay, that caffeine will be much higher in your system, even 10 hours later, right? And those high levels of possibly like 70 milligrams of caffeine and you're still being in your system will impact your sleep. Especially with shift workers, one of the largest concerns is that you're not consuming caffeine during your shift hours and rather consuming caffeine in those outside hours, trying to stay up during what we call our standard daylight hours, right? You're using caffeine to try to keep you up in the hours which you really shouldn't be, rather than using caffeine to get you through that shift. So it's really, really important that you take caffeine throughout your early waking cycles and throughout your early work shift. And the important thing also is to stop taking caffeine 10 hours before bed is usually just a great rule of thumb for most individuals. So Intel has a ton of resources provided to you on making sure that you are optimizing your sleep. Through the Exos app, we have awesome programs about setting up your circadian rhythm, powering down before bed, and one of my favorites, how your bed, pillow, and posture affects your sleep. So this is great, whether you're a back sleeper, a side sleeper, a chest sleeper, there's a lot of great tips and tricks they give to you to help optimize your sleeping patterns. Headspace has a lot of great stuff for sleep, such as bedtime stories. They have advice on sleep hygiene and strategies, guided sleep meditations, as well as relaxing sleep sounds and music, right? And the other thing that can really help everyone improve your sleep is you have the option to have a one-on-one coaching session with any of our amazing coaches through the Exos app. We can work one-on-one with you to look at your sleep schedule, look at your sleep chronotype, and best figure out where to include your exercise to make sure you're optimizing your exercise as best you can. And this is the self-plug point where I'll throw it in the chat here, just in case you'd like to set up a session specifically focusing on setting up your chrono exercise schedule. So in conclusion here, when we're talking about optimizing your chrono exercise, right? The most optimal is to find out what your chronotype is, whether you're morning, evening, neither, and try to fit your exercise within those hours and staying consistent, working out at that same time every day. Now, if you can't naturally, for whatever reason, work out in those times that your body naturally does, the next biggest thing is to stay consistent, right? Work out at the same time every day so your body and your circadian rhythm has a chance to adjust. A little bit less optimal, but still great, is get your exercise and fit it in whenever you can, right? You'll still get the great benefits of exercise. What we really want to emphasize is making sure that your exercise isn't coming at expense of your sleep. That's the real important one we want to drive home. So ending up here, we have two examples of some of our coaches on the account here. So Will here, he has the line chronotype, which is what I have as well. And he feels best early in the day. So he's a real morning person, right? So this is an example of what a schedule could look like. So at 5:30 a.m., he wakes up, does some meditation, and he exercises at 7 a.m. So he gives himself an hour and a half to let his body wake up. And then he works out at, when he feels the most energized. And then after that, he starts work at 8 a.m. And then at 8 p.m., he starts that process of winding down, right? He's drinking his sleepy time tea, he's foam rolling, he's doing his breath work. And then that way his body naturally wants to go to bed and will be probably asleep anywhere from 9 to 9:30. So that's what fits best for him as his morning person chronotype. So when we look at Nicole here, she's the opposite. So she's a wolf chronotype, and she feels best later in the day. So she likes to wake up around 7:30, and she goes outside, gets some light, which is really, really important for making sure you feel awake. And then around 9 a.m., she starts her work day. So she, as a wolf, likes to work out later in the evening naturally. So she likes to work out around 6 p.m. And then also she notices that if for whatever reason she has to work out, possibly later in the evening, that she'll either shorten the workout or reduce the sleep intensity to make sure that there's no sleep disruption caused by exercising too late in the evening. And then from 9 a.m. to 12 a.m., she's preparing for bed, making sure her nutrition is dialed in, abstaining from screens, doing some recovery process. And if she's feeling awake, she'll go to the Exos app and or Headspace to do some recovery work, okay? So that is all of the information we have presented to you today. Again, the Intel Vitality Program thanks all of y'all so much for coming.